In interest of everybody's time to be timely tonight, I introduced myself to most of you. My name is Jennifer Lochran. I'm with Marstons Clean Water Coalition. Our office is right down the street here on Main Street. If you're ever in the neighborhood, come and visit with us and stop by and say hello. I was the one that emailed with most of you, and I would ask that after tonight's event, please keep talking to your neighbors about this. We want to keep communicating with you folks about what's going on at Marstons Clean Water Coalition and about the project that you're about to hear about this evening. Tonight is a discussion. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions. We're going to be sharing a lot of information with you, but this is not the only time that we'll be meeting with you. We'll discuss at different times when it's good to bring you back in and have discussions, maybe go out to the bogs with you and the land that we've owned. So before I introduce Z. Crocker, our executive director, I want to point out two other people in the audience. I got Katie Campfield. Katie is a social scientist with the US EPA Office of Research and Development. Katie has worked with us on several projects. She had done a lot of work about community engagement, hearing what people that are involved in our projects about what's on your mind, to get feedback, not only to provide to us, but to provide to others. And then we have Town Councilor Paula Schnepp that would just like to give a couple words. So why don't I no words? Or
No,
just
just like
okay. Okay, and then we'll go to Z.
I'm your neighbor and I'm your town councilor, and the main reason I'm here is because the project is part of my backyard as much as it is part of yours. So I'm very interested to hear what's going to be happening, but I can also be your voice if you have any concerns that need to be raised. And again, I believe that Marstons Clean Water wants to be the first to answer your questions, but if you have, consider me another source. I don't know if this is going to, any of these efforts are going to go before the Conservation Commission for permitting, but there will probably be many opportunities for you to ask questions and to, voice your opinion if necessary. So just so you know that this is a very open process. On tonight's town council agenda, which I will be leaving this meeting a little early because I have to get to Hyannis, there will be two items on our agenda to place a conservation restriction on these bogs. And you may talk about this during the meeting, but to me, that's a win-win because it will protect these bogs in perpetuity. And what they're planning to do on the project will have to be consistent with those conservation restrictions. So I just want
a real quick question on discussion on the bogs.
Yeah.
Are you talking about only the bogs that are highlighted in yellow or all the bogs that are interconnected?
I think that there's a map. I know that I think some of the bogs are not part of the conservation restriction.
I'll show you in the map exactly.
You'll see on the map.
So that comment was related to the ones you're highlighting.
Yes.
Yes.
We'll talk specifically about which ones those are.
So that's all I really wanted to say. So again, I didn't bring any cards tonight, but if you go on the town website, the town councilor, contact information, my cell phone, my email address is on there. So anytime you have a question, feel free.
And before Z comes up, I do want to say that this meeting is being recorded and be posted on a video. So my goal is to get this out to your other neighbors as a way to communicate and for you to share with others. So as soon as I get it from the library, I'll be sending it to the email addresses that I have, and hopefully you can share with your neighbors as well, because I would like this to organically grow to get more people involved to hear what's going on. So Z?
Maybe I'll grab the clicker from you.
Yeah.
So I'm Z. Crocker, Executive Director of Marstons Clean Water Coalition. And I grew up here. I went to high school here, Marstons High School. Family from here, virtually forever, practically. The first Venus was born in the town of Marstons in 1762. People say, well, your family didn't get far. And I say, well, actually, we like Cape Cod. And we didn't get far, but we're back. And we've always been here. We love it here. And I describe what we're trying to do as a rescue mission, but it's not a secret mission. So everything we do is transparent. We're happy to talk to anybody. We're happy to show you anything we have, all the documents, anything. We're happy to talk about it. We don't pretend to know everything about what's going on, and we don't pretend to be the experts on Cranberry Bog restoration. We're gonna talk about why is that important and why is it meaningful, especially to all you guys who were named in the process. And Paula, I'm a big fan of Paula, so please vote for Paula Schnepp. I'm gonna throw that out there because she's been a huge supporter of particularly the housing in the town, and a lot of what we're working on really is connected to housing because wastewater, water quality, and housing are all connected to what we do and what we enjoy on Cape Cod. That's the bottom line. And I didn't know Paul was a neighbor until one day I was driving down literally our driveway, and I met her husband who was trying to find a little dog who was lost in the woods. And I was like, well, who are you? And he introduced himself, and it was Paul's husband. So Small World Chapter 3. So I grew up here, and literally I remember sitting on a dock fishing when I was a kid. I'm 68 years old, and I could see the fish get my bait 10, 12, 15 feet down, right? Now, if you go fishing on the bays around here, you can see about this deep. You can't see, and I came back after working as a career in financial services, and I said, what happened? What happened to the water? I don't get it. I don't understand how that could be. How come the lakes and ponds that I used to swim in, a lot of them are now closed? How come I see signs that you can't walk your dog because your dog, licks the wrong kind of stuff on the surface, the dog will die. This is crazy, and yet this is what's going on, and this is what we're trying to change and protect, hopefully. So, where am I going?
Yeah, other,
What's that?
it's the other one.
The other one's down?
Yes.
Okay. There we go, sorry. So I said this already, run a rescue mission. I'll go pretty quick, stop me if you want to. I want to give some background, first of all, in terms of how we got here, and then we're gonna talk specifically about the box. So this is the 3 Bays watershed. This is where we all live. I always say it's kind of funny, this is a town map. And so, the fact that it's kind of dark colored around the edges, I always say it's a town map, so it's kind of looking like it's North Korea on one side. It's like there's nothing there. There's everything there. There's houses, there's golf courses, etc. This is the third most troubled estuary on Cape Cod by nutrient pollution. You can see the size of it, 12,500 acres roughly, a lot of ponds. And we have, I always think, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We've got great water, we've got great things, but we also have the transfer station, which I always grew up with, was all the time. And we've got a lot of problematic features. We've got beautiful Indian ponds, and we got these beautiful cranberry bogs. We're going to talk about the cranberry bogs and the future of the bogs and why we're looking at a restoration project for the bogs. So we know that things are overloaded with nutrients. So what is that all about? Our septic systems, or cesspools, if you have those, hopefully not, really don't do a good job at getting rid of nitrogen. Now, nitrogen, which is simply fertilizer, comes from all of us. Our urine turns into ammonia, turns into nitrogen. Same fertilizer you might put on your lawn. When there's too much of it, it's a bad thing. And for the saltwater estuaries, and for the freshwater too, that's a big problem. So we all live on a sandbar, we know that. The sandy soils really allow everything to flow. Groundwater on Cape Cod moves about 1 to 4 feet a day. So it's constantly moving, and it's pretty much always moving from the northwest down to the southeast toward Nantucket Sound. A lot of problems are being caused, so you'll see this kind of growth regularly in different saltwater areas. If you go down to Prince Cove, if you go down to Warren Cove, if you guys have an opportunity to go around North Bay and the 3 Bays, it's a mess. It's a really big, disgusting mess, and it's getting worse all the time. So we think it's problematic, not just for shell fishing and recreation and tourism, but it's going to impact real estate values as well. How bad is it? We actually test the Marstons Mills River in 10 locations weekly, and we've been doing that for over 5 years. We have enormous amounts of data in terms of what's in the water. And we also test around the bays to see what's going on in the bays themselves. And we do that just under 20 times a year. We report the data to UMass School of Marine Science and Technology, as well as a group called the Center for Coastal Studies. up in Provincetown, they're the ones that protect whales. They do most of their work around whales, but they also look at water quality. And so you can see here, most of the water, unfortunately, is very, very problematic. So we're looking at dissolved oxygen here, and the numbers are fairly recent. And so there's so little oxygen in the water that fish can't survive. And we don't necessarily have fish kills because fish, aren't stupid, they leave, right? Their conditions aren't good, they're gonna swim somewhere else where they can go away. So really you see fish kills when something will collapse all at one time. We see it occasionally, but we haven't seen it lately, thank goodness. So the scientists that have been studying this a lot longer than I have, look at the Three Bays area, and they say we've got a load of around 47, just under 50,000 kilograms of nitrogen that's entering the saltwater estuaries. An amount that would be healthy would be around half of that number. So we have to get rid of roughly half of that number. So when I started to look at and think about how do we fix that problem, and this is again targeting the estuaries, not the lakes and ponds, we'll talk about that too. But we looked at, so how do you get rid of that? And we discovered that all of the troubled estuaries on the Cape are fed by rivers, right? Now, of course, the Cape Cod are not really big rivers, right? They're really big streams, frankly, but they produce a lot of water. And so when we discovered that, I started to go up to the bogs and talk to some of the farmers and the Hamlin family, and you guys probably know the Hamlin family. I said to me, gee, about 20 plus years ago, we started to use less fertilizer because everything got green on its own. We didn't have to use so much fertilizer. And that was really an aha moment, man, like, really? Wow. So things have changed. It really just means that the load that we've got from our septic systems is producing nitrogen. The nitrogen is actually producing the food to help the cranberries grow. Good up to a point, but there's so much of it that it continues down the river. And so from the cranberry bogs that we're going to talk about to the headwaters of the bays, so we're talking Prince Cove, that area, takes about 5 or 6 hours. So it gets there really quickly. Going through Mill Pond, you guys probably know Mill Pond as well. And so that was really an important aha moment. Now, we also work, and we'll talk just for a minute about alternative septic system technology, which is the other part of what we do. So we knew that if we're going to fix the problem for the water, we needed to attack things at the source. So we're very big supporters of the town's municipal expansion plan, sewer expansion plan, critically important, enormously expensive, very concerned that we're not going to have the money to get that done in the end. And so we need to have choices. We need to have other approaches. We need to do lots of different things, including restoring these cranberry bogs. We'll talk about what that kind of impact that could have. And so in the land of what kind of impact could that have, about 8,000 kilograms annually flows through the Marstons River, originating in the cranberry bogs, not from the bogs themselves. The bogs themselves are really just a natural collection system for the groundwater that's coming into that area, which has been coming into that area for thousands of years. But it's a great target and a great opportunity. This is the town's plan. May not be completely up to date, but it's pretty up to date. And so this is the 30-year plan to look at sewering this part of the town of Osterville. Red is the first 10 years, green the second, yellow is in the last 10 years of the plan. Even after that, we don't manage to sewer all of the town of Osterville. One of my big concerns is there are a lot of areas that get no treatment at all. And I think everybody actually needs to treat their wastewater. It's critically important for all of us to figure out how to do that. And that's why we're working on these alternative septic systems. But it's also important to try to change things as quickly as we can. And that's why the cranberry bogs could be so critical. Because, as I said, the water that's transiting the bogs gets to the estuary in 5 to 6 hours. The whole opportunity to restore these bogs is actually to slow that water down. We're going to talk about what kind of plants might grow there. And the plants would actually soak up and use all of this nitrogen naturally and remove a lot of it. We don't know exactly how much. I said 8,000 kilograms comes through. If we could get half of that, it would be a huge thing, because you could actually change something, as I always say, in our collective lifetime, we might actually see a change in the water, a positive change rather than negative change. So that's why we're targeting that area, and that's why we're looking at this plan. And we think in the end, even though, as Paula said, we're looking at conservation restrictions, which we're really talking about ecological and environmental restorations. The CRs are not designed to talk about water quality. But the reason that we're doing this really has everything to do with water quality. And the restoration is going to make a huge change. We've had the scientists look at this carefully and understand what kind of impact that could have. Not only for the estuaries, but most importantly, in my mind, for our drinking water, right? Everything we put down the sink, everything we put down the toilet, everything we put down in our shower goes into the ground, goes into our aquifer. There's another organization I'm sure Paul knows called Silent Spring. And Silent Spring has a great expression that I was just thinking about again recently because I was reading about it, which is cave cutters don't know how much sunscreen they drink. Take a shower, you wash it off, goes down, it's in the aquifer. We are definitely drinking sunscreen all the time, all sorts of chemicals in there. We just don't know what they mean, right? We don't know what they do. I've had a lot of cancer in my family, my wife, my mother, my sister. Is it all about water? I don't know, but I'm suspicious. And I think that the water is definitely problematic. Now, is the water safe to drink? Yeah, by federal standards it is. We clean the water, we treat the water, and we're gonna do more to treat the water. So I don't worry about the water, but I recommend that anybody that drinks water uses an activated carbon filter at their house, like a Brita filter you have in your refrigerator. It's just a first line of defense. And even though we treat our drinking water, something that I didn't know until I started to do this work, a lot of the water lines, delivery lines for COMM and really all the water departments are really old. So the line that comes down Main Street, Osterville, is from 1936. Okay, 1936. So do you think that pipe looks good? I don't think so, not so much. So I don't care what they're treating at the source. I think we need to treat when we're drinking as well. But we also need to figure out how we're going to treat what's going into the ground. And that's vitally important. And that's why we're working on alternative septic systems and on what we can do in the Cranberry Bogs. So there's the alternative septic system. I won't talk a lot about that on the left. Here's the box that you guys are all familiar with on the right. You know, one of the things we did that really was surprising to me, and Kate might remember this, we were doing the work and I said, there's a lot of things in the water. Let's test the Marstons River itself and look at it, see what else is in the water. And a friend, a good person who I know well at the DPW in town said, well, what do you want to do that? What are we going to do? What if we find something? I said, well, we're going to look anyway. I don't know what we're going to do, but let's look. Well, there are elevated antibiotics and elevated antidepressants in the river itself, okay? Which just tells you what's going on. Now, this is going on all over the world, all over the country, so it's not unique to us or our town. I think what is unique is we have an opportunity to do something about it. We've got a town who's very committed to expanding municipal treatment. We've got alternatives coming along, and we've got this really interesting opportunity with the Cranberry Bogs. So this is the area where the bogs are. You guys can probably recognize the Indian ponds on this map. And this is the swampy area that would have been here historically. This is a map from 1888. Muddy Pond, now called Crocker Pond. I don't know why I didn't name it. You know, Long Pond, which is one of the most problematic ponds that we have in town in terms of nutrient problems. And Shubal Pond, where we're doing a lot of work on alternative septic systems to understand how well they can work and what they can do. And by the way, the systems that we're working on are removing 95 to 97% of the nitrogen that's going into the system. So they look like they're going to be really, really successful at scale. A few years away for scale, but it looks good so far. So here are the bogs. Let's talk a little bit about what we're doing and where we're doing it. So we've acquired 2 different parcels right now. This parcel right here, that's about 17 acres. And that was owned by the Hamlin family. We purchased it from Samantha Hamlin. Samantha's cousin, Eric, who is John's son. A lot of you, I'm sure, remember John, who passed away relatively recently, wonderful man. And John owned all this acreage here. And he gave about 60 acres to his son Eric here. And Eric has sold us 47 of those acres. He's keeping some acreage. And he's gonna continue doing some cranberry farming up in that neck of the woods right there. These are the M&M bogs, not involved in this. And this is Joe Keating's land holdings that he bought from John. And we didn't buy anything, we were hoping to, but we weren't able to get a transaction completed with Joe in time. Or I mean in time. What we're in front of the town tonight to talk about is, we were working on this process. We set up to buy some of the land, and in February, the state knocked on our door and literally said, we had a Cranberry Bog restoration project in Plymouth. The deal fell through. The state has $2 million. If you can figure out a way to put together some deals, you can have $2 million. Well, guess what? We went to work, really. We had to get that money, and we had to get the work done by June 30th, because it was a June to June state year. So everything had to be done by then. And believe me, there was a lot to get done. And Jennifer did the lion's share of the work to get this done. So a shout out to her to make that happen. So we were able to get a great appraised value for this land, and we were able to pay the farmers, I think a really generous and a good amount of money. So the farmers were in the end, I think, are gonna find very happy. And that's particularly because all of this land, the entire area, is what's called Zone 2 water protection land. And so it's protecting our drinking water. That's what this land is all about. And that's why this is so critically important. So these are the parcels that we own, and we're going to talk about what we're hoping to do. We are hoping to acquire some other acreage. So this acreage right here is actually got an easement by Sean Hallett. And some of you might know Sean. I don't know. Sean's a really nice guy. Sean's dad, Bob Hallett, around many years, farming in many different areas. They farm almost all of the bogs around Willowbend, for instance. So he's a great guy. They have an unusual structure, so he just has an easement. He doesn't own the actual land, so trying to figure out that part of the equation is very difficult. But we're talking to Sean all the time about would he like to transition his land over to be restored as well. And so one thing I just want to mention for a minute is over here, and in many other areas, like over here, there's a lot of abandoned cranberry bogs on the Cape. And these areas that I just pointed out were abandoned years ago. So they were farmed in the 1950s. And what happens to a cranberry bog that's abandoned, it kind of becomes neither fish nor fowl. It's not a good woodland. It's not a wetland. It really just is kind of a blah in the middle environmentally. It's not doing any good service. And why is that? Because the cranberry bogs, which in this area were started around the 1860s. And you guys will remember, probably know the way cranberry business runs, and I am no expert, but I know a little bit about it at this point, is you would usually get a hard freeze. When I was growing up, you could skate on the frozen cranberry bogs, right? And they'd often, every 3 years, they'd put sand on top, and that sand would, as things melted, go down and allow more drainage, better drainage into the vines. And so over 150 years plus, what we've now got in all these bogs is a mat of compressed sand and vines, which is 2 to 3 feet thick. And underneath that is peat. And the peat, we've done the measurements, is between 10 and 50 feet thick. It's really a big sponge, a sponge from thousands of years of peat. Okay. And so the cranberry business is changing. And in fact, I was over talking to Joe Keating just yesterday, last night. You know, we were talking about how you doing, what's going on, what are the conditions. And listen, farming is going to get more and more difficult, I believe, on Cape Cod because of climate change. And no matter what you believe about why is the climate changing, I think everybody's going to say it's different. Different than when I was growing up. We're not skating on the bogs in winter anymore. And that's critically important for the health of the bogs because it kills all of the critters. So we're not killing the critters anymore, so pest control is becoming even more problematic. The bogs also don't like high humidity and hot weather. And we got plenty of that, particularly this summer. And so when I talked to Joe, I said, how's it going? And he said, you know, that 3-4 inch ring bomb, that was a problem. It is a problem. It's gonna be a problem for all the farmers locally. Because it was not only hot and wet, you got such a big blast, you also had some that came out right after that. And really created a rot and problem for the berries themselves. So he's concerned. We'll see how the year goes. I hope it's okay. But the conditions are gonna be more and more challenging for cranberry farming around this region. There's about 13,500 acres of cranberry farms in southeastern Massachusetts. So you can see what's going on in cranberry land though. Wisconsin is really taking all the volume at this point. We've been staying kind of steady state in terms of how much production we've got here in this state. Cranberry farms are certainly changing. And on the bottom, you're looking at what a restoration will look like, can look like. And that's one that we just visited recently called Tidmarsh. Talk about that. Some of them being used for solar purposes. None of these bogs are appropriate, nor would they be. I'm not a huge fan of that application, except in areas where it's upland and dry. And in that case, maybe there's good opportunity for solar. We'll see. So, you know, and the answer to what's in it for you guys, it's really all about clean water, and also having something iconic and beautiful to look at. You know, and I want to take the questions and talk about what we think it's going to look like, and why. So you can read this. I'm not going to go through each one of these things. Reduce the nitrogen and letter N. We're working on fish passage in that area. We intend to fully keep this area open for walking. We're not going to close anything off. We also want it to be a learning experience. We think there's a huge opportunity to learn from what we're doing here, to learn for the community and also learn for scientists. Because as I said, there's really not a roadmap for how to do a perfect restoration. But here's what's most fascinating, and this is the area that we're talking about again. So we talked a little bit about this map already. Our goal is to have it look like this over time. This is a site called Tidmarsh in Plymouth, not far from here, Audubon Sanctuary now. It was a very big 600-acre bog system that was restored 7 years ago. This is what it looks like now. And so the fascinating thing about Jennifer and I just went up there and we talked with all the people who worked on this. And the way you do a restoration in more shots of Tidmarsh is you actually go in with a backhoe and you punch through the surface of the vines and sand. Pick it up, put it off to the side, and so it's kind of pockmarked with water. We would redirect the stream course, like it is here on the bottom left, to be more of a winding stream with oxbows back and forth. And the whole idea of all this is how do we slow the water down? I'm going to show you some other plants. There'd be a lot of ponds, small ponds throughout the system. And what was fascinating about Tidmarsh was fully 97% of the plants that you're looking at pictured there were from a seed bank from 160 years ago.
Wow, that's crazy.
So when you just punch through that layer on top and you kind of let nature do its work, in just a couple of short years, so this is a year later, this is a couple of years later, really quickly, things start to grow. And it's the same things that used to be there. And that's a pretty amazing thing. And we know from the studies that are being done that these plants really soak up a lot of nutrients and will remove an enormous amount of this water, not just the nitrogen, but the plants are also, and the biological activity also gets after the contaminants of emerging concern and breaks them down. And that to me is a huge, huge opportunity here. We're going to work with Atlantic white cedars. That's a local plant. A lot of it has been destroyed in a lot of the hurricanes. These are cedar trees that like their feet wet. They live in swamps. We all know there's lots of cedar, different kinds of cedar trees. White cedar is the bark. I mean, the inside is actually white instead of red. So it's a different kind of tree. And we're working with all sorts of partners. We can't do this without partners. whether it's the climate, people at Woodwell, I don't know if you guys know Woodwell or not, but it's a local Cape Cod organization, they're terrific, or others. Our intention is to keep the site open like it is now. We don't plan to have a lot of construction right away, but we are permitting, hopefully, with the CR allowing. And as Paula said, there are gonna be a lot of permitting, conversations here. Concom, Conservation Commission, the town of Marstons is definitely gonna be involved. The Cape Cod Commission, we've been before them already, they'll definitely be involved. The Army Corps of Engineers will definitely be involved. The Department of Fisheries involved. So we're gonna have probably 6 different permits. It's gonna take some time to actually get all this permitted. You guys will have an opportunity to come forward and talk also about permitting and exactly what is being done, and why, how, et cetera, et cetera. But we want to plan for things that can happen, that would be possibilities. So we'd love to have some walkways elevated above some of this marshland, so you could actually go in. And you can continue to walk around the site like you can now. Right now, the berms, so you can walk across the berms. So we're gonna eliminate a lot of those berms, but we want to still make sure we can walk around the site. So we have some walkways. There are a couple of areas, not many, where we have a little bridge. That would be principally to allow Eric Hamlin to reach some of the other bogs that he needs to get to the internet bogs. So wooden bridge probably will be the structure. Should look natural. I don't think it's going to be problematic. We'll have signage. We'll have lines of some kind, probably not this robust. But the idea is, can we have something so people can stop, look at birds, not a hunting line, right? That's a good viewing line. And also be protected a little bit from the sun and the wind. And you guys walk around the site, people know, especially sometimes when it's cold and windy. But you might still want to walk around, and you might need a break for a minute. So we're not looking to create, something that's going to be an attractive nuisance. We're also not looking to have this be something where there's, hundreds and hundreds of people gathering around, walking around the site all the time. I don't see that happening at all. What we plan to do is have the upper part of the site, Samantha Hamlin Bogs, near Paula's house. There will be some parking there. So we would look to eliminate the parking right now that would just happen on the roadside, or some people will pull down into the land that was Eric Hamlin land and just drive around. We don't want to allow that to happen. We don't want motorbikes. We don't want ATVs. I don't really even love bicycles, but fine, some people ride bikes still, I get it. But mainly I see it, walking, running, that kind of stuff. At the bog house that's near Paula, we're gonna have accommodations for somebody to live, somebody to take care of things, somebody to pick up. I'm sure you guys are all good citizens, but not everybody's a good citizen. So my main goal is when I go out and see, people that pick up after they dog and then they do the plastic thing on the side of the park. Why do you bother to do that? Because it's worse. So, we're gonna have that kind of work to pick up and clean up and maintain. Even now, you'll see it's kind of getting overgrown. We're gonna be out, maintain the roads the way they are, make sure the brush is cut back so we can walk around and enjoy the walkway that we're walking around. We'll also really want to work closely with our neighbors, because in some cases, the land actually comes down into the box itself right now, right? And so there's really some questions about private property, and do you, as somebody who owns that, really want people walking across that land or not? So we're gonna work to figure that out. Either we'll bring people around the site, or we'll cooperatively work with you to make sure it's set up in a way that you're happy with it. And I want it to be adaptive, so if it's not working, if something is problematic, let's figure out how to fix it. The parking again would be all the way over by Samantha Hamlin's old house. And so it's not a short walk around these bogs. We're talking about several miles, right? So unless you're dedicated to go out for a long walk, it's not like I'm expecting, I don't mean this derogatorily, lots of mothers with baby carriages to be walking around with, 5 young kids. You're gonna be walking around, on a trail system that's meant for walking around. So here's a plan. This is a preliminary plan, and it'll be a little confusing, but I'm gonna try to add. This is Bog Road right here. So this is north, this is south. Okay. So this is a preliminary look at what it might look like with some ponds up in this area. With some restoration in some of these areas where we may do, if we're allowed to, some looking at climate change and adaptive changes for plants. So for instance, Atlantic white cedars grow all the way from the Carolinas all the way up to Nova Scotia. So even though I'm really excited that you can expect most of the plant material to come from seeds from the 1860s, I don't expect this area to be the wetlands of the, right? 2050 is going to be different. It's hot. We'll see what survives and what doesn't survive. So we're going to try to keep an eye on that and see what we can learn. So ponds are also very successful at removing nutrients. The river, as you can see here, would get wound around a little bit. These little pieces here, this is where we put logs, literally logs go into the river itself to slow the river down, to allow for more plants to grow, or allow critters places to hide. There's fish in these rivers. That's what that structure is meant to duplicate. In this area, which is Joe Keating's area, we are working separately, but it's an aligned mission to allow the herring run to go back in the middle pond here. This, it's interesting, and you guys may know this, each bog is named, okay? And so this bog right here is called the Run Bog. Joe has just replanted it with a new cultivar. You know, it's very, very productive. It's very problematic this year. He was telling me, I kind of didn't realize when I planted it, I was like taking care of an NBA all-star player. He said, Jerry, you really need a lot of care and feeding. So if you walk by that now, you're gonna see those plants are kind of yellowing. And they're not happy right now. He's trying to figure that out. So these hybrid cultivars are, you know, it's not like the old species. They're a lot more productive, but they're tricky. So going alongside of that area, our hope is that we can reconnect the herring run by the Run Bog. This used to be the natural herring run, and reconnecting it would allow the fish to go up there. This is still a tremendously productive fish passage, even though it's got a lot of problems. So you guys probably know that there is a sluiceway now to connect. That's collapsing. It's not working. And the town had a plan working with the USDA, with NRCS, to rebuild that and put in a 1,300 foot long concrete sluiceway. And I said, seriously, is that the best solution? The concrete sluiceway, what if we could recreate what used to be there naturally instead of sandy bottom? And the fish don't have to jump through hoops to get there. How about that? And Joe, who's a great guy, also had a problem because when there's too much water, he couldn't control the water flowing out of the middle pond into this area. And one of the interesting things that I didn't realize until I started work on this about climate change and sea level rise. We're seeing sea level rise for sure, okay, and observing it for my life, and there's a lot of data on it. Not huge, but it's enough to try to figure out. That's also going to push the freshwater lakes and ponds and our whole aquifer up at the same time, equally. And as that rises, what the scientists say is the ponds become more productive, meaning that they're going to start to have a bigger flow coming out of them. And so that's going to be problematic for Joe, and that's why Joe is like, look, if I can, you know, fix this in a way that I can still use the water coming out as I need to, but can a ring fence and have the fish not be in my way and not be problematic, it could be a good thing. So we're working toward that. We don't have a final deal with Joe. I'm optimistic we can get one. You know, part of the story of this mission, I always say, is let's not let perfect be the enemy of good. I think this can be good for a lot of different constituents, but it's probably not going to be perfect because I don't think it can be. So that's the story. These are our partners. We've got lots of partners. We can't do this alone. So I mentioned USGS, the Mass DEP, EPA, U.S. Department of Agriculture. Town is obviously a critically important partner as well. The Division of Ecological Restoration of the Nature Conservancy has been very helpful here. And so with that, I'm going to be happy to take questions. Yes, sir.
Can you go back to the slide before this?
Yeah.
So the stuff on Joe's property that you have all up there, everything, none of that is gonna be touched till you have a deal with Joe, or some of that will be touched, or how? is that?
Which area are you talking about? Put me on the right
Sure,
direction
you can
here.
go back down.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Excuse me.
So right where you were talking about all Joe's stuff.
So nothing's gonna happen here for now.
Yeah, because you don't have anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so even, I mean, listen, what's gonna happen is the water's still gonna flow through this. And so we were most interested in, trying to find a deal with Joe to purchase the swamp, only the swamp, okay? And to be perfectly transparent with you guys, we offered Joe about $400,000 for that swamp. 12 acres of swamp, okay? We couldn't get a deal for that. And I kept saying, seriously? It's a swamp. It was $400,000, I'll eliminate all of your debt. Couldn't get it done, very frustrating. That being said, I get it, we were under, time crunch. And Joe was looking for a lot of, certainty in a land where, as I said, it's gonna be good, it's gonna be perfect. And, and he was worried, well, what's gonna happen in 20, 30 years? Yeah, I trust you, but you may be gone, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, I get that. But what's gonna happen if there's a hurricane, we have 27 inches of rain? So, everything's gonna change. I don't know, you can't get certainty by certainty, but we can get close. And we're still talking to Joe and I'm still optimistic, but that was the situation. We've still got the river down here. That's not gonna change. The lion's share of the treatment is in this area. The amazing thing about this system is that even though the headwaters is over here, and this is where Samantha's, bogs are and where Paula's house is in this neck of the woods. This is Sean Hallett's property right here. But the lion's share of the water is only about 10–15% maximum of the water comes from this area and enters here. Most of the water, there's a huge spring right here. There's another, a gigantic spring right here. I don't know if any of you guys know the Rolfs or not. Right behind their house. There's just enormous amounts of water that's coming out of this area. It's actually mind-boggling. And I was over, just yesterday looking by the bogs we owned by Paula. And that had been closed off because of the rainstorm to help Sean Hallett, who was getting flooded out. And that area is like bone dry practically. So the stream is like, there's nothing going on. But if you go down to Joe Keating's house, it's a river again. I mean, it's just groundwater. There's so much groundwater here. It's amazing. And even a couple of years ago when we were out, and there was a big drought a couple of years ago, it was still very wet. And the guys would come down from the state and they say, we're shocked that this is wet because we're looking at other bogs that are going dry. So, all of this is a plan from a couple of years ago. So we're still working on exactly how this is. We've got construction plans. That if you guys want to read construction plans, you can read them all day long. But I'm happy to share all the data, all the information. What's that?
Copy of that.
Yeah.
Sure, that's no problem. Even though it's a couple of years old, so I really want to get an updated version. So what's, some of the things that are gonna change here, for instance, Eric is keeping this bog. Eric is also keeping this waste area right here, okay? And so he wants to turn that into a cranberry bog as well.
Just to let you know, all these slides, I already have it in our website.
Oh, beautiful.
So
Yeah, they're all
after this meeting, everybody that gave me their email addresses, you're getting this whole PowerPoint.
Oh, beautiful. Don't waste any.
I have
Yes,
two questions. The
Sure.
first one is, would you just highlight Osterville Drive on that map?
Sure.
I think I got it, but I want to be sure.
So Whistleberry is right here, right? Goes down that road, kind of wends around. This is the M&M bogs, another bog system. That's Whistleberry there, down that road. I won't get it perfectly, but that's where it is, right along that edge.
Okay, you mentioned that one of the bog restorations, they put up solar panels, and that you weren't much in favor of that idea.
Not in the wetland areas yet.
Okay.
None of that will happen
Is
here.
there any industrial nature of anything going on here? Are we going
No.
to see any machinery?
No, I mean, not, you'll see it while we're doing the restoration, but after that, no. I mean, all the pumping houses are gone, all that stuff is gone. I mean, and that's part of what we're doing here is everything will be gone. Now, Joe's still gonna have some equipment there, because he's still pumping. But outside of that, everything is gonna be gone.
So you're not getting the sand out, you're just punching it through, layer of sand?
You know, in some places, we will take some sand out, it's all about elevation, but we'll probably reuse it in other parts of the site. Very expensive to move sand. And
Yeah, the bull briar, the only way to get rid of bull briar is with a pulling out,
Yeah,
can't do anything else, and that has seeded in along with, well, it lines up the trees and it
yeah,
seeds
we're gonna
in
try to get
point
rid of the
90.
invasive stuff. and
That's-
part of the
How
problem.
can that not come in whenever you clear something, you know?
Well, you know, I mean, it was really interesting looking at this site at Titmarsh in Plymouth. Because, excuse me, I was really concerned that there'd be a lot of invasive species, and there's not. There is some Phragmites, which is an invasive reed. We have a little bit of that, which is right by the holding ponds, right here. Right, there are two ponds here right now. So you can walk by there and you can see some of the Phragmites. It looks like it's a cat o' nine tails thing, but it's not, it's invasive. And so we'll try to get rid of that before we do anything. And, you know, best case, heavy equipment, winter of 24, absolute best case, if every permit was like, fine, this is great, no problem, here's where we're standing. Probably not gonna happen that way, so we're probably looking at 2025 before we do anything. And oh, by the way, you know, we need to go find a couple of like $2, $3, $4 million bucks, which we don't necessarily have hanging around. This has pretty much been a effort of private fundraising. And we turned it in, and we're lucky enough to get a lot of grant money. So we have a grant from US EPA for $750,000, it's called a NET grant, Southern New England EPA grant. And that is allowing us to do these plans. So all just the planning part of it is costing hundreds of thousands of dollars before we've done a thing or moved any dirt or done anything at all. And so we're putting that together. The state has given us another grant for $70,000. I think more money will come from the state, that's the Division of Ecological Restoration. And then this is a separate part of the state, the conservation area, that hopefully is gonna give us another $1.3 million plus or minus with this acquisition. That's just for the acquisition. But that's gonna allow us to have more money in the bank. There's also an anonymous foundation that's approached us and said, we love the project, we're really interested, we could give you up to $800,000. So I think we're gonna be really successful raising money. And I haven't really knocked on Paula's door yet. And by that I mean the town, not Paula's door physically. But the town, I'm hoping, will also have an interest in this. This is so important to the comprehensive water management plan because it could save the town and all of us tens of millions of taxpayer dollars if we're able to have this clean the water and do it more quickly and then transition over and not do as much storing or in the same places. And my hope is that over time, Title V systems get replaced anyway with this new technology that we're working on. And my hope is, and my belief is that there'll be subsidies to allow that to happen. So it's not gonna cost all of us an arm and a leg to upgrade. You know, the bottom line is right now, which you all know, your Title V system breaks, fix it. You're on the hook, figure it out. Go find the $15,000 to do it, right? And my hope is that what we have is a combination of state grants, which is now becoming available, $12,000 tax credit is now available to upgrade. I'm hoping that the town will also provide some subsidy to do this. By my math, the expansion of municipal treatment costs over $100,000 a parcel, maybe well over. And these new systems probably cost $30,000 to $40,000. So depending on how the financing happens, it could be a really attractive opportunity, but I view it as kind of a generational change. Your system breaks, it gets upgraded. You want to add a bedroom, you get an opportunity to do it, you can upgrade. Accessory dwelling unit, that could be an opportunity to upgrade. Hopefully, my view is, right now, if you sell your house, you have to prove that your title plant system works. And at a property transfer, in my mind, that's the perfect time to upgrade it to better technology. Yes, sir, a couple questions.
So looking at so this is projected, if everything goes well, to reduce 1/3 of the nitrogen.
Potentially.
So where's the other 2/3 coming? That you're finding.
Sewer.
Sewers across
sewer across the area is really what's targeting, that plan. So if we go back to, let me find the,
That's 30 years.
you know, here. So this plan is really targeted around this estuary. This is where the state is mandating the town of Barnstable to upgrade. And what Mark L will tell you and what Paul will tell you, what's changed here lately is that the new regulations that came out on July 7th from DEP essentially mandated that this had to happen. And either we're gonna find the money various ways, including tax increases, which in my mind will be non-trivial over time. Or Mark will say, unfortunately, we're gonna cut services. We have to do it. This is something that we have to do. We have to fix this problem. And then so the answer, sir, is that the sewer has to reach this area, or alternative septics have to reach this area and correct it. We have essentially 20 years to reduce 75% of the load. But a successful restoration of Cranberry Bog could not only save us a lot of money, it could buy us a lot of time.
So the methodology to turn the bog over, create a slower moving waterway, and then to create depressions. We, in this state, Carver, Marlboro, Rochester, the last few years have had pretty considerable mosquito-borne illnesses in the area. Mosquitoes are not a super problem, but if you create a bunch of mosquito-borne depressions, it seems like the mosquito issues in this area is going to go up dramatically.
I had gotten very worried about that. It was really interesting when we were at Tidmarsh. We were in the middle of a swamp, okay? All of the swamp, lots of lakes out there. I didn't get them once. There were no mosquitoes. Why were there no mosquitoes? Dragonfly, birds, bats. This was like a feeding frenzy. It wasn't just standing water. And because of that, frankly, I was very, very pleased. That area is now an Audubon sanctuary. Not that there's never mosquitoes. You know, if you walk around at the right time of night, there's always mosquitoes from 6 to 8 o'clock at night. But we were there for hours. Jennifer and I, with 50 other people, were there for hours. There was no mosquito problem. And they're not treating anything. It's not like they're putting pesticides down. They're not doing any of that. But I actually, go ahead.
Yeah, last summer we had our open house at Samantha Hamlin's, the land that we own out there. And prior to that, the event, about a month ahead before the event, I had a mosquito control nonprofit, that's what they do. I said, I have about 200 guests that are coming to this thing. I need to know what the mosquito levels like at on the land. They were miraculously told us, you don't have to worry about it. And we had a pleasant evening. If anybody came to our open house, there was nothing to be concerned about. And there was nothing on our land that they saw that we had a mosquito problem.
Excuse me, could I give everybody a little bit of history? Because I live, unfortunately, next to Raleigh, and we have a maple swamp.
Yeah.
And when I bought, there was no road along the bottom.
Yeah.
And John put in the road, and what was it, 85, 86 I built.
Yeah.
And by 3 o'clock, I get eaten alive from the mosquitoes. It was crazy. John put in a pipe.
Yeah.
Because farmers can do anything they need to do. And he put in the pipe because the water was up and down, and it would wash out his road a little bit.
Right.
So that pipe is good. It's full of pussy willow in there, and Eric had to recently again take the roots of the pussy willow because it blocks that. When that pipe gets blocked, well, it backs up to Rolf's in mine, and I am concerned about the mosquitoes. And every, a little pond is great when you've got the wildlife to eat it, but still, I mean, that's a little pond, that's a natural, that's just history of where, right on that corner.
And I get that, and everybody's been concerned about that for each one of the restorations.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen that problem, is all I can tell you. I was concerned about it myself.
And when you're
So I
talking
guess
about,
what-
it's draining right into one of that side ditch that goes along the bog road that you put in.
Yeah, there's not gonna be side ditches like that, right? That's not what's.
So if we fill in the side ditch, where is that pipe gonna? Can I
We're
have
looking for, you know, we're gonna have a water system that is a natural drainage system, just like it's meant to be. Where you've got, you know, water, but you've got a lot of activity in the water. It's not just standing dead water. It's not like the water in a puddle on the side of the road where, yeah, you're gonna look and you're gonna see mosquitoes, because there's nothing going on with that water.
And 4 days,
Where's it
yeah,
go?
mosquitoes, yeah.
So we're gonna slow it down. And listen, I'm happy to work with you. I'm happy to have you talk to experts on it. I'm not Mr. Mosquito. I don't like mosquitoes any more than anybody else does, okay? I am not a fan of mosquitoes, but I can only go by my experience where, again, I was really surprised because I was concerned. I got this question too many times with the people that are doing this work. And so, you know, my recommendation would be go down to a restoration, down in Falmouth, which is called, put a method. You can walk around it and experience that location. The newest one is also in Falmouth by the Falmouth Rotting Gun Club. It's called Child River. That was all just done. It Marsh is not far from here, but it is a little bit further away. It's harder, you can't really get into the middle of it because it's walk along the edges. So I think these are good questions. I can't guarantee this is kind of, the idea is let's work with nature. And, you know, yeah, I can understand if it was a bad design, and that was problematic. And part of what we're trying to say is we want to make sure we have adaptive management so we can modify something if it's not working.
So the squiggly wiggly you're trying to put in,
Right.
you're not gonna really change the river, you're gonna add that squiggly wiggly
Yeah.
to the river
Yeah.
at first.
Yeah.
And then, because there's so much wildlife in the bank of the river, it's like, probably the best time, probably midsummer, it's probably the animals and everything, you know, to disturb. If you're cutting squiggly wiggly away from, yeah, middle of winter, whatever. It's so dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna take a while to do this construction. It's not a trivial construction project. To weave that all in, to weave in the lumber into the site, to get everything prepared to grow. It's gonna look bad for a while. It's gonna look bad for a while. There's no way to get around that, but then it's gonna take hold and then it's gonna work and then it's gonna look great, frankly.
So could you anticipate, if we talking about that water flowing through, Bog Road? Bog Road has a causeway depression in the pipe under
Yeah,
there.
that's a good question, exactly what's gonna happen there, I don't know.
Anticipating a small bridge to allow the water to flow through there before that.
Listen, and I control the bog road, remember, that's Sean Hallett, that's his land, it's not my land. So I don't
That's
control
Bog Road. Bog Road.
bog road.
Public road.
Yeah.
Public road.
So there'll be a lot of work that needs to happen, my hope is it will happen. I can tell you that, you know, depending on how things go on Whistleberry, I think if we're able to permit and make the changes and Joe agrees, I think the plan would be to put a much bigger culvert into Whistleberry, connecting Middle Pond and what used to be bogs there, to get natural flow through that culvert, because that's quite small. And so my hope would be, because I've looked at that area, I'd love to see that opened up and frankly be a much bigger bridge so the water could actually flow through. One of the biggest sources of water is just on the west side of Bog Road.
Is that tennis court in your way?
The tennis court down over, I mean, yeah, I don't know, I don't think it's in the way. I mean, if you go down there and look
I
at
was,
where.
I was kind of hoping we would get rid of it sometime.
Yeah, this kind of scary, right?
You know what I mean?
Kind of a funny area, you're right.
Yeah, so if you need that tennis court, let us know.
So you call this a bog restoration, you're
Right.
working on the river itself to make it more winding, to slow the water down. What's gonna happen to the actual bogs?
They'll go away.
They'll just go away and turn into
I
forests.
mean, there'll still be, you know, if you go even, you know, I was surprised going to, cranberries grow naturally, it's a natural plant.
Find it out in the shore.
They've been here
Easily.
for years and years and years, and so, you know, the way I think about it in general is, in the 1850s or 1860s, the cranberry business probably saved Cape Cod economically, right? We were like, there wasn't much going on, there was no tourism, nothing for, you know, that's not what was happening here, the fish had all been fished out. And suddenly the cranberry business was really successful, people made money. I actually think that now, a lot of the cranberry farms can be repurposed and help save ecologically. It's really, that's how important, and these are in places where you wanna actually let nature do the work. The Santuit River is a disgusting hot mess. The worst estuary on Cape Cod is Pompanesett right next door. You go to Shoestring Bay, and you're gonna gag. It's absolutely horrific. But I can tell you what, it's the ghost of Christmas future if we don't fix it. And, you know, that's, you know, as somebody said to me the other day, you know, if you have more shark attacks on the south side and you have dirty water, who's coming to Cape Cod, right? You're gonna go to New Hampshire or whatever. It's, you know, and I'm worried about that. I really am. Yes, ma'am.
Are you planning to own this property in perpetuity or after the restoration?
So
What
that's a
will
great
happen?
question. So the way the structure would work is, Barnstable Clean Water, which is 3 days preservation. That's our founding name. We've been around about 25 years. Barnstable Land Trust will own the conservation restriction. So it's BLP as our partners.
So that's where you get the.
And so everything will be operated under their umbrella, and with their cooperation.
They weren't on your last page. Was the board.
Well, they should have been.
That-
My bad. Yeah.
I got a question.
Sure.
Where the property is now, like you said, our property actually goes
Yeah,
to the end
yeah,
of the bog. The bog, but since they're farmers, they had rights to
Right away.
own the property, do take stand, do whatever they
Right,
want.
right.
Now that you bought the property, and it's
Yeah.
no longer a farm.
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah, I'm not gonna have the right to go on your land and dig sand or anything like that.
It's
no.
kind of like a trail that goes right through. our
It is, and
backyard
that's
now,
why I would work with you guys and say,
so-
do we want to design something so that's still a trail and people can still walk around it? Or do you want the trail to jog around so that you got your fire pit, but people are gonna walk around the fire pit?
Yeah, like
And
the other
go-
side of
and
it,
go around.
yeah.
Got heavy equipment, we're gonna be redesigning things, we can do that, it's fine, I have no problem with that. That's okay.
Cause I know you'd probably want it that way at the show yard.
You know, I want people to be able to walk around it, I mean, your area,
Yeah, we have no
your
problem.
area is kind of a loop that's an extra loop anyway,
Yeah.
right? It's not really
It's
the
like-
main, it's not the main loop, but
The
that's where.
biggest issue I have, ever since we've been there, is people coming, walking their dog at 5 in the morning.
Right.
deciding to
And
have
they
a
leave their little
conversation.
plastic bags.
Deciding to have a conversation.
And my bike. Yeah.
Right. Well, these are, you know, and that's why I wanna be, that's why I wanna be really respectful and try to work with you to figure it out. You know, and some places, you know, maybe we need to plan ahead, I don't know, maybe we need to do something. So that people can still walk around, you know, your neighbors will wanna try to, still gonna wanna walk around. But I wanna make sure we try to eliminate as much of the nuisances as possible. You know, Eric told me a story, I kind of mentioned it to some of you guys. And he called me up and said, I can't believe this guy just drove on my land. You know, he was over,
Oh, they do.
you know, he was over and we'll go there. Anyway, this guy was changing his oil.
Are you serious?
Eric, you're like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just changing my oil. You're changing your oil in the box. Get out of here. You know, I mean, some people are crazy, right? I mean, and so, you know, we know if it's because we want to do it, it's not gonna be perfect. We will put, gates up, not metal, like, you know, horrible gates. I think it's just like what you see at a farmyard, so kind of a, you know, shape like that, that's open, so you can walk around, no problem. But so people are not gonna drive, not gonna drive down. The only driving that should go on is one of the people that's maintaining the lawnmowers that are going around. That's it. I don't see anything else. Where you're gonna drive and park is gonna be all the way over by Samantha's down up near Paula. But again, we're not building a parking lot for 100 cars. It's a small area and we've dedicated that way.
Is that parking area up off the same foot in the town? Get up that far?
No, it's off River Road. I-48 River Road is where our land is. And I haven't gone to Paula and say, is that okay yet? But the plan is generally that would be the best area behind a house that we now own, where we could provide and accommodate some parking that wouldn't be in anybody's way or in anybody's face or close to anything. There's a horse farm right there. Horse farm is actually problematic for the world. And that's kind of a whole sidebar story, we're hoping to work on that as well. Each horse is worth between 20 and 40 people in terms of the amount of urine that they put out. There's 12 horses on that farm, okay? And all that hill slopes right down and goes right into the box.
Well, that's the other thing.
It's a hot mess.
Oh,
And Eric has said the water quality changed so much when those horses moved into town. And so, you know, we're looking at, I don't want to get rid of the horses, like horses, but there's ways to fix that problem too.
You're into dirty toilets?
Sorry.
I said you're into dirty toilets for the horses.
Yeah. Well, what we're looking at doing is putting in, a permeable reactive barrier.
Love it.
And so a permeable reactive barrier, in this case, which is we digging a trench and putting wood chips in and covering it. The groundwater would go in and hit the wood chip, which are carbon sourced. When there's no oxygen available, a certain kind of bacteria respirate, they literally breathe the nitrogen, turn into gas, it's harmless as gas. The atmosphere is 78% nitrogen, and that's the way the alternative septic system works as well. They use wood chip as a source to convert the liquid nitrogen into gas, and it's harmless that way. So, again, I'm excited about it, but is it perfect? No. And I mean, you know, you brought up some good issues. Mosquitoes are a concern to me. We gotta make sure we get that right and don't create, I don't wanna create standing bodies of affected water. Can't happen. Won't happen.
If nitrogen is a large concern in
Yeah.
that project.
Yeah.
Reducing it. What about people that fertilize their lawns on the whole area in mass amounts? The amount of landscaping companies that profit doing that. Would it make sense to start there?
Well, about 85% of the problem is the septic systems on the Nampa Cape Cod. About 15% is, the rest of it, about half of that is fertilizing lawns and stuff, as far as we can tell. Stormwater is another big factor. So those are the components, and so the biggest target is the septic system and what's in the groundwater. I don't trivialize the fertilizer issue at all. In fact, I'd love to see the town outlaw a lot of fertilizer and make it much, much harder to use. And I have friends who come down here from New Hampshire and Vermont, and they walk into Home Depot and they say, you know, this is all illegal. We wouldn't even be allowed to have it. Couldn't use it. We shouldn't have it. Seriously.
Is there a way to quantify how much actually is being put into the groundwater?
It's a really good question. I haven't seen any really good math that would tell me the answer to that question. The answer is some landscapers are really good and knowledgeable and smart and do it, and some are not. And some are just like, I'm gonna put it on as much as possible. A good lawn removes about 85% of the nitrogen you put on it. So the problem is just putting too much on, and then the lawn can't take it up.
No, they're licensed applicators, right? So wouldn't there be documents of how much they're purchasing per year?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen good documentation, but I haven't seen anything that I'm really confident to say, you know, this is the answer. And it's something that I've worked on. But look, we're a little teeny nonprofit, you know, what you're looking at, half the staff right here, myself, that's it. There's a couple of us. But that's all. We raise money privately, we give our time generously, and there's only so much we can do. And, you know, we're trying to do the best we can. But there are things like fertilizer that drive me crazy that we should be changed.
I think that people are becoming more aware of what's, you know, natural places.
I think so, and you know, if you go down to our office, and people say this to me, you know, both ways, you're gonna see a lot of native plant material. Okay? It's not a lawn, it used to be a lawn. A lot of people stop me and say, your yard looks disgusting, like, why do you have this stuff?
The meadow
And I'm like, these are native plants, and if you like to eat fruit, and if you like to eat them last night, that's what we have here. These are all the native plants that should be on Cape Cod. And you know, take a look and learn something. But not everybody wants that condition, I understand it. People want what they want, right? And then so it's an interesting dynamic and an interesting battle. I have hydrangeas at my house. My wife loves hydrangeas. I could not get her to rip them out. They're not good environmentally. They use water like it's crazy. So I think everybody changed anything, I mean, everything. Yeah, mine,
Don't want to throw rocks at demonize success.
yeah,
But it'd be imprudent not to point out that along all of those 5 days,
yeah,
there are hundreds of homes.
Yeah.
That have beautiful green lawns.
yeah. I totally agree with you.
Within spitting distance of that.
And they should be.
And they each have a septic system
Yeah, I totally
right there. So, again, I'm not demonizing the success of people who are privileged enough or not. I hate that word because that says that thing. Are fortunate enough to live in that location and have those homes. I love one myself.
Yeah.
But if we're not doing anything about those fringe properties that are participating in this project to a certain level.
I couldn't agree more, and Paul has certainly talked about this at meetings previously, and I talk and continue to lobby the other main agency that has skin in the game and can change that, and that's the Board of Health. And what I've said to the Board of Health, and Paul has really say this is, anybody who lives around the water, in my view, any of these homes, anywhere in here, should be forced to change to the alternative septic system. They all can afford it, every single one. There's lots of people, and I've done the work, that have fought me, and they have cesspools. There's a rule with cesspools that if you have an interfamily transaction, you can keep the cesspool. And I talk to people who live on the water, and I'm like, I don't care what the rule says. Why don't you do the right thing? Okay? You live in a house worth millions and millions and millions of dollars, and you tell me you can't afford $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, that's probably really. So I agree with you, and listen, the Board of Health has told me that once, the system that we're working on, there's gonna be one system that looks particularly good. It's not fully approved at the state level yet, it's what's called provisionally approved. We're probably 2 years away from full approval. I fully expect that the Board of Health will essentially change the rule, and this has already happened in the Vineyard, in towns like Tisbury, other communities, Wellfleet, and other areas are starting to do this, do exactly what you're saying, just saying, full stop, you have 5 years to upgrade, you gotta stop. That's what should happen all day long. That's right.
Do you know if the upgrade would, like, say, where we are, our house can only be a 3-bedroom? Because of
Right.
because of the old type of system.
Yeah.
Will a new system change that?
I hope so. Paul has heard me say this too, because the math around the change, in my mind, can and should mean that a 3-bedroom house could be a 4-bedroom house. A 3-bedroom house with a new system reduces the waste load by about 85%. If it was a 4-bedroom house, you still reduce it by about 78%, 76%. So it's still a complete win.
Yeah.
And I've had plenty of people knock on the door saying, hey, if you tell me I can get another bedroom, I'll put it in tomorrow. And I think that we'd find that would be a really good way to go. So I'm hoping, working with Paul, that kind of thing will happen over time.
As in most of these things, it's complicated, and one of the main sources of financing for our sewer project is the SRF, which
David Bobbitt.
David Bobbitt, thank you. And they have certain requirements that you can get certain, rates for borrowing money if you meet certain requirements. And the town has met 4 out of 5 of those requirements to get 0% financing. But the last one that we have to meet is what's called flow neutral. And the staff is working on a way that our sewer management plan would allow for some growth, some additional bedrooms here and there and other things, without going against the principle of flow neutral, because the whole idea is that you don't want to just say, oh, you're gonna have a sewer system and now you can just have unlimited growth, thank you. And we don't want to finance it at 0%. So it's a balancing act, and so we really want to look at this in ways that are fair and make sense for the community, because this is a huge investment for all of us, and we want to make sure that we all are experiencing it the best way possible.
So I'm not anti-growth either, by the way. I think that if we change this and if we allow a lot of the existing homes, especially a lot of the white space out there, to change over and have these new septic technologies, that would allow for growth. because we're reducing dramatically the existing load that would be going in. So I think there's every reason to think that's an opportunity. And I also have said, politically, I think, and I've said this to Mark Ellis many times, I think we need to offer people that live in these other areas, many of whom, and maybe even some of you guys, are on private well, right? And if you're on a private well, do you really want your septic system 100 feet away? I don't think so. You know, I mean, and so to me, it's natural, if I were living on the north side, to say, why am I voting to clean up Craigville Beach when my septic tank is over here and you won't give me a dime? And yet you want to raise my taxes 3 times to pay for it. I don't get it. And so I think that'll be an important future battle. And my view is everybody has to get something. Everybody has clean water. Everybody should get the opportunity to do that and get some kind of equal opportunity to clean up the water that'll help them and help the community. Anybody else?
That's one last comment. Yeah. One of those depictions, we had a small pond.
Yeah.
And I'm going to forget the name of the road.
Right.
But it took, it was part of the Whistleberry discussion.
Right.
The gravel based road
Very
that's now
hollow.
paved, is that very
Very
hollow?
hollow.
That,
Up on that.
Yeah.
Up very-
I was on the planning board at the time.
Yeah.
And the final wind came through to fix that problem.
Yeah.
And now if a new pond is gonna go in there, what type of disruption does that have to those homeowners that are on that hill with that newly finalized wonderful road to them? And now we might come in and put a pond or disrupt that area again.
And then
That-
that
that's-
drainage on the side of that road.
Yeah, that was a problem.
But if they put a wetland there, it'll absorb more of the water, not less.
Quite possible.
So,
That one where I think it's big enough.
did I go by it already?
They never did it. When you walk in and tell the sun's not right there.
It was a gravel road, now it's paved and it was.
Yeah, no, I know which one you mean. So it's over here, right?
Yeah, it's right off a bog.
Right. This is Winnie's Bog. These are the holding ponds, right? So this is Winnie's and this is Bogberry Road right here.
Yeah, that's it.
Right. And so that was just paved. And so, you know, you're right, that's an area that we've got to look at. I think that plan, I'm gonna get lost where I am, but I'm gonna look at it right here. I mean, the plan there was basically that it's gonna be a winding area, but you're right, there is a pond that's there. Again, we've got, if you go around monitoring wells that are showing us the water table throughout the bog system. Getting us pretty good information, is it perfect information? No, I'm not confident it is. I mean, so if there are areas like that, that's exactly the kind of information that we need. And so my answer would be that, you know, I'd have you talk to the construction guys, have you talk to the planning guys, and let's take a harder look at that. Let's put in some more monitoring so we understand what's there and what the issues are and plan for it.
Just
I
one,
don't want to create a nuisance.
just one final question, where the red star is the 47 acre, just to the
Yeah.
right of that shows a little swamp, that for most of the season is a pretty good sized little pond.
This one,
Yeah,
yeah,
is a pond a benefit or detriment to your plan?
so that's a really good question.
Because
Yeah.
that would be a very nice little pond. If it was actually, maybe it would be a pond a little bit more.
Yeah, so here's the aha moment about that farm, okay? So while we were testing in like 10 different locations in the bog system itself, we were working with a guy named Dr. Brian House. Dr. Brian House is the original architect of all the Southeast New England water quality related stuff. Paul New England died sadly about 5 months ago. So he'd studied this area very carefully. And Brian always said, ponds are the most successful, ponds are the best thing we should have, ponds. Ponds do great work. And so one of the things we're working on is to try to also restore, in this case, dredge Mill Pond at 149 and 28. Not everybody agrees with that, by the way. There are fisheries guys that are saying, it's got a dam, you should get rid of the dam, blah, blah, blah. This has been going on for 15 years. Now, Brian House has said, you get out, we've done the work in other mill ponds in Falmouth and elsewhere, and we know it can remove 65% of the nutrients because of the critters that are in the pond itself, or plant material, really successful. Other people have said, I work with some of them, wetlands are the most successful, you should have more wetlands. Which I said to both these guys, well, which are they? They said, we really don't know. I said, okay, great, that's not that helpful. So like, we're gonna do both. That's why we're gonna have ponds and wetlands, kind of like nature would have been back in the day. You would have had beaver dams, you would have had ponds, you would have had streams.
Just one editorial comment for. Right there at that pond, the
Yeah.
town spent probably a considerable amount of money. Put a raised nice walkway so you could see that pond. And yet there are 15-foot trees that are growing up on the other side of that. You can't see that pond at all for the price of that bridge. So
Yeah, I wouldn't
if,
do that, so-
yeah, that's not on your issue, but
Yeah.
if you're going to do that here, then there has to be some level of maintenance to maintain the beauty created.
Waterfowl that live in there right now,
Yeah.
if that all goes away, what happens to, we have eagles, we have
Great
the.
pond.
Yeah, we want to see all of it. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Spray,
Thanks.
you know,
Yeah.
it's beautiful, and then if that all goes away.
That way, that's part of what why we're hoping to do the natural, wildlife, animal, rivers. That's a lot of what we would expect to live in the water, live in the river. And the animals are gonna eat all the mosquito larvae out of it. To create a natural balance system, it's not gonna be out of balance. It's gonna take a few years for it to really work. But that's also why we try to design a conservation restriction and easement that allows us to be adaptive around things like that. And so I've had heated arguments, conversations with my contractor, who's an contractor. I said, to your point, I said, well, we need an adaptive plan. If that plan doesn't work over there, I'm gonna fix it. I want to do it. Don't give me a conservation restriction that says, no, it has to stay like that forever. I'm like, well, if it doesn't work, change it. So that's part of what, I think we'll get a lot of support.
Is there a budget, including hiring, expanding your staff maybe, or?
I hope I can raise money.
Including the
I'm trying to
security.
find somebody right now and, we're gonna work hard to try to raise more money and expand our staff. a little bit, yeah.
There'll be a lot of surveying, like,
We got a lot of surveying, we this work with, but I have very detailed survey plans now of the whole area, including the firehouse. We're also working with Don Tree. Another engineer.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do a lot of that kind of work, really understand it, and we'll be doing more of it. Typically, when we sit down and get together, we should get together and walk, your site and talk about it. And try to figure out, what would work best. I'm happy to do that. We're gonna be moving dirt all over the place. Not that hard to make it happen. And by the way, we'll be working with people like Joe P. I'm sure. Why not?
So we gotta get Paula and Zeke to the town council. So any last questions?
How deep are you gonna go? Just a couple feet? You know, I'm in feet level, which is something.
No, we want to find.
Increase of 12.
That's where the seeds live. And that's what
Fine,
we
just need lots. I represent education, I'm not running for re-election, so that's all.
And,
That's all you're saying, is just to be in,
areas
be in the valley.
is a challenge. Sometimes you go in and they sink, right? Even big pieces of heavy equipment. So
Right.
it's a, literally a balancing act. Because the kind of equipment in there is just not working.
And then the other thing I was wondering about, now we're getting, wetlands and that kind of thing, is that gonna put us up on the list to have to spend the 30 grand to get the new alternative septic system?
That's
Still unintended consequences.
Right. It's, we should essentially have a cleaning system in your front yard. Although we would hope to help the community put more of those systems in over time, right? We're not gonna force anybody to do
Well,
it.
maybe
It's
there'll be
gonna
a
take
grant,
people on the work,
maybe there'll be a nice grant for the people that,
maybe.
or test, you might need some test sites. You can buy my house, you can use that.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.